there. So in this section, we're going to look at the monthly loan payment formula. And if you think about it, there are lots of things in real life that you pay off in monthly installments. Two of the biggest ones that I can give you that most everybody can relate to is your car payment and or your house payment. So we're going to be looking at fixed installment loans here. Whenever we're talking about a fixed installment loan, these are possible terms that you could have to pay them back. 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or some cars go up to 60 months, and cars are known to go longer than 60 months these days as well. And mortgages, your home loans go out 15, 20, 30 years, for example. The graphic that I have here in the middle of the page is just to show you that, for example, for your house payment, I've got years measured along the x-axis and your payment measured here along the y-axis. So here's our payment line. Oh, let me get myself a pen. Here's my payment line. This is my monthly payment. Okay, monthly payment's not changing here. But if you'll notice in that very first payment, this much of it is going to interest, and then this little teeny tiny bit down here is how much is actually paying off your house, for example. And each year, or each month, it gets better. But as years go on, that interest amount becomes smaller, and then how much you're paying towards your house gets larger, for example. Okay, so just to sort of, like I said, give you a little bit of a graphic there. Um, let's see, down below. In 1969, Congress passed what was referred to as the Truth in Lending Act, and that required institutions to clearly tell you what your annual percentage rate is on your loan, as well as the finance charge, any additional fees that might be charged in relation to any type of loan that you take out. Some examples of loans that we'll be looking at here in this section: car loans, student loans, personal loans, credit card payments, fixed rate mortgages. Those are all examples of the types that we'll be looking at here in this section. So if I get you to flip it on over at the top of the next page, just like always, all of these formulas are located on your formula sheet. But the loan formula is up at the top, and so this is your monthly payment formula. And so your PMT is the monthly payment itself. P is how much you are um, borrowing, okay? How much you've taken the loan out for, whether it's your house, your car, or a new washer and dryer, for example. So your P is how much the loan amount is. R is the interest rate. It goes in as a decimal, just like always, divided by 12. On the bottom, you got your parentheses, 1 minus, start a new parentheses, 1 plus, that rate divided by 12. You're going to raise it to the negative 12 times T. Be sure that in your calculator that you use the negative sign and not your minus sign. Okay, there's a difference, and you want to be sure you use the negative sign for this guy right there. Okay. All right. So and then down below, if you want to figure out, well, the accumulated amount then that you end up paying over the life of your loan, that's equal to your payment times 12 times T, the number of years that you took out that loan. And then you can figure out the total amount of interest then that you ended up paying on that loan. That would be the total amount that you paid minus the original cost of the loan itself. Okay. All right, so let's come on down. Let's do example 1 from top to bottom, and then I'll let you flip it over and try example 2 on your own. So here in example 1, it says, suppose that you have student loans totaling $7,500 when you graduate from college. The interest rate is 9% and the loan term is 10 years. In part A, it wants us to find our monthly payment. So our monthly payment, I'm just using my formula from up above there, is equal to, and you'll notice, I'll go ahead and draw my division symbol, but it's your P, how much you're taking your loan out for. So you're taking the loan out for the full amount, $7,500. Parentheses, the rate is 9%, so I'm doing 9 divided by 100, so that'll change it into a decimal, so 0.09 divided by 12, close parentheses, and I've got my divided by, parentheses, 1 minus, parentheses, 1 plus, that rate, divided by 12, excuse me, raise it, parentheses, negative 12 times T, got 10 years to pay it off, so times 10, close parentheses, closing them again, excuse me. You should be able to type this as, and use every parenthesis that you see there on your formula sheet. If you will type those in your calculator, most calculators can handle you putting this in all at one time, and that should give you an amount here of $95.01. Excuse me. All right, so if I scoot on down then to part B, it wants me to determine the total payment over the life of this loan. So you're going to make $95.01 payments for the next 10 years each month. So using that formula from up above, it said then your final amount is equal to your payment amount times 12 times the number of years, which is 10 in our case here. Nothing fancy in your calculator, just type that in all at one time, and you should land at $11,401.20. Okay. Um, if we come on down then to part C, it wants to know, determine the total amount of interest then that you paid over the life of the loan. Well, we know then that here's our total amount that we ended up paying, and I'll bring our formula up. The formula is up above in that box. It's equal to total amount you paid minus how much the loan was to begin with. So total amount we paid was a little over $11,000 minus the original price of the loan, $7,500 amount of the loan, not price, original amount of the loan. If you do that subtraction, you ended up paying almost $4,000 in interest, $3,901.20. So this is where I'll stop and make a little aside. Granted, you have $7,500 that has to be paid back here for these student loans, and you have 10 years to pay it back in. But nothing prohibits you from making more payments each month. So, while they're telling you that it would be a $95 a month payment, say for example, one month you had a better month and you can send them $125. Or it's tax season, you've gotten your tax refund back and you can send them an additional $500. So anytime you get extra money that you can tag on to this payment, this monthly payment amount, what that does is two things. It gets you paid off sooner, and it saves the amount of interest that you would have to pay, thereby saving, or the total amount saves the total amount of money that you have to pay, thereby saving you the total amount of interest that you would have paid in the long run. So anytime you can pay additionally, and this is just talking about student loans, but the same thing goes for your car or your house. If you can pay an additional amount each month, then you'll get it paid off sooner, save yourself interest. Okay. All right, so I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to let you try example 2 on your own, as it just reiterates those same exact steps. Check yourself by the solution key. And I'm going to move us on down here. So I would say, pause the video, try that one on your own. I'm going to come down here to looking at the monthly payment for a car loan, because at some point, either, maybe you've already done this before in your life, or, at some point you probably will do this, where you will buy a car for yourself. So we want to talk about, well, how is that calculated? So, because the best thing that you can do for yourself before going into any dealership to buy a car is to know what you can afford, and know, kind of have an idea of, if you've got your eye on a particular car, for example, know what that monthly payment would be, and then, are you going to have to put in a down payment to reach the monthly payment amount that you can afford, and things like that. So do your homework ahead of time. Know the kind of interest rate that your bank will offer, because they'll try to get you to finance with them. If you can get a better interest rate on your own, a lot of times they may say go for it, or they may say, hey, we can match that, for example. All right, so like I said, just do your homework ahead of time. All right, so one nice thing about living in North Carolina is that they allow a tax credit for trade-ins, and this is actually in the consumer's favor, because what happens is that if you go to a dealership and you want to trade in your existing car to purchase a new car, what they do is they take out the trade-in before they calculate tax. So it saves you some tax money. Let's see. So let's come down here below, and then this little bit of note. However, most states do that tax credit, but there are 7 states that do not do that tax credit. So just in case you were to happen to move and kind of question it later, if you were to live in California, Hawaii, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Montana, or Virginia, and I should say, whether you live there or if you were to buy a car in those states, they do not do a tax credit for a trade-in. Meaning you're going to pay the full purchase price of your car. You're going to pay tax on the full purchase price of the car, as opposed to being able to take out the trade-in and then pay tax. All right, so let's move on down to what are the steps for buying a car in terms of figuring out what your monthly payment would be. There are 4 steps here, and they need to be computed in order to get the correct monthly payment. Okay, so step 1 is that you take out the trade-in if you have one. If you don't have the trade-in, you're going to skip on to step 2. But the first thing that you do is you take out your trade-in. And what I mean by that is you take the car value that you're looking at and subtract your trade-in. So maybe it's a $20,000 car. They're going to give you $5,000 on your trade-in. So now 20,000 minus 5,000, $15,000. Okay. That would be the amount that you'd pay tax on. Okay. So in step 2, you calculate the tax. And to calculate the tax, it's always going to be if you're living in North Carolina, 7% at the moment, so 0.07 times your answer from step 1. Okay. Then in step 3, you're going to calculate your principal. How much are you going to finance? So that's going to be your answer from step 1. Plus your tax. Got to add in your tax. Minus your down payment. I'm going to abbreviate that, DP, for down payment. Okay. If you don't have a down payment, you won't have anything to subtract. Okay. And then lastly, monthly payment formula. You're going to use that monthly payment formula that we used in the last example. Monthly payment formula to figure out what your monthly payment would be on that particular car. All right, so let's come down below here and let's do example 3 here together. So in example 3, it says, suppose you want to buy a new Honda Accord that retails for $32,000. Sales tax in North Carolina is 7%. You're able to get financing for 5 years at 3%. Your credit score is going to determine what kind of financing you're eligible for. Okay, so just a heads up there. It says that you plan to make a $2,000 down payment and you have a trade-in worth $1,500. And they want us to find the monthly payment for the car. So we're going to work through our steps here. First steps, we're going to take out our trade-in. So step 1, I'm taking out my trade-in. So the price of the car, my $32,000, minus my trade-in, $1,500. That's going to put me at $30,500. So again, how that's helpful is that when I come down here to step 2 and I calculate my tax, I'm going to be paying tax on $30,500 as opposed to the full purchase price of the car. So that's what I meant by that trade-in credit from before. So in step 2, I'm calculating my tax. So I'm taking 0.07 times that answer that we just got, the $30,500. So I do that multiplication for myself in my calculator. And that should put you at 2135. Okay. Then in step 3, we move down to our principal. How much are we going to finance? So we have the amount of the car. So that's the $30,500. Add in your tax. So that $2135. Minus a down payment. And we had said from the top we had a $2,000 down payment. So subtract $2,000. Nothing fancy there in your calculator for that computation. That should put you at financing $30,635. Now, excuse me, it should be noted here that this is whenever you're, for example, if you're sitting in the dealership, they're going to offer you a couple of things. They're going to offer you extended warranties. They'll offer you gap insurance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with gap insurance, but gap insurance is especially can be especially handy for brand new vehicles because, for example, if you've got this $30,000 car, the moment you drive it off the lot, it's no longer worth what you just paid for it. But let's say you get into an accident 2 days later. Your insurance company says, well, that car was only worth $28,000, and you still owe the full $30,000 on that car. What gap insurance does is gap insurance kicks in and says, okay, we'll cover that extra $2,600, for example, that you still owe on that car. So it fills in the gap that insurance would not have covered if, you know, the unfortunate event that you were to get in an accident and it's not paid off for. Okay. All right. And so then lastly, in step 4, we use our monthly payment formula to figure out what our monthly payment would be on this car. So again, if you were to purchase gap insurance, it's usually around $1,000-ish range, or an extended warranty. Those would be values that would get added in here. Okay, but I'm not gonna. We don't have that as part of our problem here. But those numbers are usually added on to this amount here. Okay. All right. So a monthly payment then is going to be equal to the amount that we are going to finance, our $30,635, times our rate. So this is where the 3% comes into play, okay? So you're qualified for 3%, so 0.03 divided by 12, close parentheses, we'll divide it by parentheses 1 minus, parentheses 1 plus, your rate, 0.03 divided by 12, close it, raise it, negative 12 times 5, close it, and that would put you at a car payment of $550.47. Okay. So you can then, kind of think about it from there. Okay, well, is that still too much a month for you? Do you have, for example, maybe more of a down payment that you can make? Maybe you can negotiate, will you give me more for my trade-in? Um, maybe kind of shop around, see if you could get yourself a better interest rate. You could even choose to finance it for longer. All of those that I just talked about could potentially reduce your monthly payment if you had your heart set on that particular car. Not saying all of those can happen, but those are all things that would play a factor in reducing how much you're going to finance, which would also then reduce, or part of those would reduce how much you'd finance, which could reduce then your monthly payment, because we did talk about negotiating your rate. Okay. All right, so I'm going to let you flip it over. Example 4 is exactly the same kind of problem where you are financing a car. The only difference is here is that I've given you 2 options in terms of the way that you can finance this car. You can finance it for 4 years at 1% or 6 years at 3%. So I just ask you to compare and contrast the 2 here. Okay, but in part A here, I'm having you find the principal amount, the amount that you're going to finance. So that's where you're going to work through those first 3 steps, okay? And then focus on financing it for 4 years in part 1, financing it for 6 years in part 2. I'll let you check yourself by the solution key. I'm going to flip it over then to the last page. And I mentioned to you at the top of this set of notes that another common place where you have monthly payments, utilize the monthly payment formula, would be for buying a home. Buying a home is the American dream. So typically homes are financed for more than 15 years. Most commonly it's in that 30-year mark, but some folks are able to do it in the 15, 20, 25-year mark. There are down payments are also a huge part of the home loan process. Sometimes you can look up and come across a loan that does not require any sort of down payment, but then other times you have to put some money down towards the purchase of your home. And many loans actually, and not some, but many loans require you to escrow your taxes and insurance into your monthly payment. So the examples that we have here in our notes do not do that, but it should be noted that most home loans would figure in adding in taxes and insurance on top of what the figure that we find here in our notes, for example. Okay. Typically, you can maybe do your escrow on your own as opposed to having it part of your monthly payment if you're able to put more than 20% down on your home. If you can put 20% down on your home, then sometimes then the loan will say, okay, well, you don't have to escrow if you don't want to, and then that puts it in. Then the burden on you is that you have to save then on your own the how much whenever it comes time that your taxes are due and whenever your insurance is due on your home, that you have to pay that for yourself. Your mortgage company would not pay it for you because it would not have been figured into your loan amount. All right, so let's come down here to do example 5. And again, I'm not going to include the escrow portion in these 2 examples. And I'm actually only going to do example 5 here with you and let you try example 6 on your own. says you're looking to purchase your first home. The house is listed for $295,500, and you intend to make a $20,000 down payment. The loan officer has determined that you qualify for a 6.5% interest rate, and it wants us to determine the monthly payment on this house if you plan to finance it for 30 years. So I'm still using my monthly payment formula. So my payment is equal to, now think about it, if I'm going to make a $20,000 down payment, then the first thing I need to figure out is how much am I going to finance? So the price of the home was $295,500. Subtract out the $20,000 down payment, and we will be financing $275,500. So $275,500, interest rate 0.065 divided by 12, close it, divided by, parentheses, 1 minus, parentheses, 1 plus, that rate, divided by 12, close it, raise it to the negative 12. You're going to do this for a 30-year mortgage. Close it twice. Utilize all of those parentheses there in your calculator, and that should land you at 1741.35. So that is just your monthly payment for just the house. To find out then, if you were going to escrow your taxes and insurance, that would be an additional amount that would be added on to your monthly payment of your house, for example, okay? But this would just be the monthly payment of the house, not including taxes and insurance. All right, I will let you try example 6 then on your own. Thanks a lot. Bye.